So here is a picture of the electromagnetic spectrum. You can think of it as a spectrum of energy the same way that if you looked at the spectrum of liquids, you would have like really thick gelatinous, like jelly-like liquids and really heavy, like oily, resinous liquids. And then you would have just kind of regular water. And then you'd have like vaporous liquids like alcohol, right? So that's a spectrum of liquids. And this is the spectrum of energy. So I like to divide it a little bit like this, which the best way to explain it is firstly, we have our negative area, which is essentially made up of low frequency radio and microwave. This is negative, and it's our kilohertz, megahertz, and gigahertz. And then we have our basically our visible light spectrum, and you can see I've kind of split these up into three as well. So it's like three and then split up into three. And then we have the positive here, which is pretty much X-ray, gamma, to some extent ultraviolet. We're not going to talk about this or the visible light, well, to an extent. So I saw this cool video where someone used their phone and they plugged the phone into an amplifier. This is an amplifier circuit here. And then they plugged that into a light and they shined the light on a solar panel here. And then the solar panel was connected to a speaker. And the music played on the phone, its data was transferred through light to the solar panel to play on the speaker, because it doesn't matter if you are using light to transfer data, if you are using electromagnetic frequency to transfer data, or even vibration to transmit data. At the end of the day, data is still data as long as you can pulse something, as long as you can have a frequency, an amplitude and such, a waveform. See, this is our waveform here. Tesla said, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. The up and the down is the vibration. The energy is the force that pushes it up, and then it rebounds down, and then it pushes up and rebounds down. And the frequency is how many times per second it is vibrating. So again, energy is the energy. It's the pusher, the mover, the thing which stimulates the pendulum that otherwise would just be hanging there doing nothing. Frequency is the amount of times it is vibrating, and vibration is essentially the back and forth, the ringing, the oscillation, which is what we're using to compress data and such. Now here's another one. As I mentioned, electromagnetism is a spectrum of energy. It is a wavelength spectrum, but matter itself is a spectrum. This is the earth element here, this downward triangle. You can see someone standing on the earth. And then there's the water element, there is the air or the sky element, and then there is the fire, which is like that blue glow and, where the stars are and all that's plasma. Where does earth begin and water start? Where does water begin and sky end? We can see, you can look at the ocean and see these absolute planes of existence, but you can heat water into air and then it becomes temporarily it becomes a gas. Or you can electrolyze the water and actually it just becomes a gas from now on. It's not going back into water. You can heat gases like a gas stove. You apply a flame to it and then whoosh, now your gas is turned into a plasma or a fire. Your plasma chamber is you're putting gas in there, electrifying it, and that's turning to plasma. Or what alchemists would do is they would heat physical things. It would turn into a gas, and then eventually a plasma, and then it would come back down and either come to a liquid, condense to a resin, or it would condense into a crystal. These four elements are essentially different stages of the same thing. Density is one characteristic, but you can have very dense. You can have like dense air, or you can have like not very dense solid things. So it's like aerogel is not very dense. So density is not the only characteristic that it's just that if you reduce the density of something doesn't mean it becomes like a gas. It becomes more like that, but you know what I mean. Going on, here is our signal generator. And from the signal, which is again it is our frequency, amperage, voltage, It's those three things: vibration, frequency, and energy. And from the signal generator, we can put the signal into a motor, which is vibration. Here is our motor. It's a circle for some reason. And what happens is that the motor spins that many times per second. It spins 10 times a second, which is 10 hertz. Now it spins 100 times a second, which is 100 hertz. It's a speed controller for the motor, because every time it goes pulse, 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 the magnets are going pulse, 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 which then moves, right? So, and if it goes pulse, 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 it's quicker, or it's slower. Sound is the same thing. It's just a vibration that is emitting itself as sound, essentially. When you use a bow on a violin or a cello string, you are vibrating that string, and the thicker it is, usually, the slower it will vibrate. The thinner it is and the smaller it is, the quicker it will vibrate, creating a higher pitched sound. So we can turn this oscillation into sound. We can also turn this oscillation into radio frequency, which is usually at the megahertz and gigahertz. Of course, you can have kilohertz radio frequency. So using an electromagnetic coil, if we run the frequency through the electromagnetic coil, now we can get radio frequency. And also power, putting a lot of energy through it. And then there's all kinds of crazy things we can do with that. So now we get energy. And then finally, you can run a frequency through a light. Again, light is just assuming you could get something to vibrate at the wavelength of light. For example, here, could it turn into light, or could it emit light? I'm not sure, because I guess we use specialized things, which are LEDs or filament bulbs and such, which happen to emit light as a byproduct of what it does. It's kind of nice. But there's an interesting thing where if you put a pulse generator through a light, the light turns on and off. It goes flash, 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 right? If you have 50 hertz or 60 hertz for your power at your house, the light is turning on and off 50 or 60 times per second. That is in the gamma state of brainwaves. If you understand about like theta, gamma, beta, alpha brainwave states, that is putting you, it's kind of like the throat level of your nervous system. It puts you around there. So we're very stimulated on a throat level ever since we achieved electromagnetism and radio frequency and power to houses and such. It's very stimulating on that area, all this stuff is. Usually when I turn on a light, it's kind of harsh, it's kind of a bit uncomfortable, or an LED or whatever. You can run frequencies through these things like I talked about in the last videos with the chakra frequencies, and you can make lights that are calming, actually, even if they're LED lights, which people have some issues with. You can make lights that run with a nice frequency, and they actually make you feel good, the same way you have the frequencies running through the electromagnetic coils, or the copper coils, and it produces nice effects that can control the body and such. It reminds me of, I heard about stores were using certain techniques to get people to buy more products or something. It's like some CIA mind control type stuff. It's pretty weird. And I didn't know how they were doing it, but I assumed they're probably using frequency, maybe coils or maybe the lights. Do you ever notice that the lights are a little bit weird and uncanny? It could be because they're mercury lights, and that just like it's mercury vapor where it's illuminated in plasma. So the plasma is just very stimulating on the nervous system. I don't know, it's possible some of these shops could even be running frequencies through things to get people to buy stuff, where they are or not. I don't know, but I heard about that 10 years ago, I think. So I imagine this is how it all works. But anyway, I really just wanted to talk about how on the lower end is more vibration, and on kind of the lowerish end is sound. On the higher-ish end, of at least for the lower, this lower kilohertz, megahertz, gigahertz range, And then we have radio frequency, and then we have light. So these things are all essentially the same thing. Vibration, sound, ultrasound, radio frequency, light, it's all like the same thing. It's just on like a spectrum, the same way that the elements are all on a spectrum. Even though you can bottle up water and you can bottle up air and you can bottle up dirt and say they're all different, and they are all different. I'm not one of those everything's the same people. Unfortunately, I don't have access to enough. They are on a spectrum, and if you can understand that frequency, vibration, and energy, and then of course your amperage and voltage is your energy, it's your wattage and such. Technically, your amperage can also be create the oscillation and such, depending on what we're working with. All these things are related, interrelated, and then that's how the solar panel playing music works. And if you can think about that, and then of course my thing is that I'm interested in relating this to the body and the organs and to like states of consciousness and health and all this kind of stuff to stimulate ourselves. Anyway, I hope that gives you some ideas and all this stuff, because it's the ultimate idea I had ages ago was a cosmic piano, that like how the C scale is the same, just higher or lower pitch, a higher or lower frequency, right? Imagine there was a giant cosmic piano that you could play any note, and some of the notes would produce sound, some of them would produce like radio frequency or energy, others would make light, others would make smells, tastes, others would like conjure objects into existence, because it's just like you have all the frequencies in existence, right? So anyway, that's some stuff to think about.